Have you ever really thought about the word freedom? It's the most powerful myth ever created. Not because it's a lie, but because it's so comforting. And a comfortable idea is more addictive than any drug, more blinding than any dogma, more paralyzing than any fear. From the moment you were born, the world didn't hand you freedom. It wrapped you in the asterisk of it. The doctor didn't hand you freedom. Your parents didn't teach you freedom. Your school didn't explain freedom. They handed you the symbol of it, the story of it, the performance of it. You see, you weren't raised to understand what freedom truly is. You were raised to believe you already had it, and that is the promise. And that promise is the first, most powerful layer of the illusion. Think about it for a second. How can you question something you believe you already own? How can you rebel against a system you've been told is designed specifically for your benefit? How can you seek liberation if you've been convinced you were never a captive in the first place? This promise of freedom is a psychological masterpiece. It makes you assume the world around you is a neutral playing field, that your choices are clean, that all paths are open, and that your life is simply the sum of your decisions. But here's the catch. Decisions made inside a controlled environment aren't real freedom. They're guided outcomes. They're curated results. When you walk into a supermarket and see a wall of 40 different brands of cereal, do you really think that's freedom? Or is it 40 variations of sugar, marketing gimmicks, and psychological triggers, all manufactured by the same handful of giant corporations? A wide selection of cages is still a cage. The myth of freedom always begins with the illusion of abundance. Choices everywhere. Options everywhere. Paths everywhere. But abundance without awareness is just a sophisticated form of manipulation, because what good is a choice when the environment surrounding those choices has been meticulously engineered? And make no mistake, your environment was engineered. Before you were even old enough to speak, someone was already shaping the world you would see. The emotions you would develop, the fears you would carry, the dreams you would chase. Freedom wasn't handed to you. A script was, but this script was wrapped in the most comforting packaging imaginable. Words like opportunity, independence, self-made, choice, democracy, rights. These are powerful, emotional words. They sound exactly like freedom, but they often function like anesthesia, because the moment you believe you are free, you stop looking for the walls of your prison. And these walls aren't made of steel bars anymore. They're far more subtle. They're made of expectations, of daily routines, of glowing screens, of social pressure, of the constant need for economic survival, and that quiet, nagging fear that sits just behind every major decision you make. Society sold you the incredible idea that you are the sole author of your life story. But they conveniently left out the part where the genres were the plotlines were already mapped out. The characters were predetermined. The boundaries of the entire narrative were set long before you even arrived on the scene. You were told, work hard, and you will succeed. A beautiful sentiment, but no one mentioned that the entire structure of the game was built long before you were invited to play. And the people who made the rules, they don't compete with you. They profit from you. You were told you can be anything you want to be. Yet from the moment you were a child, you were gently nudged, shaped, praised, punished, corrected, and aligned until anything slowly morphed into something. Something predictable. Something manageable. Something profitable for the system. The promise of freedom was never meant to be questioned. It was designed to silence the very desire to question in the first place. Just look around at the average person today. Do they look and feel free? Or do they feel exhausted, overwhelmed, distracted, uncertain, overstimulated, and deeply underfulfilled? Constantly comparing their lives to others, constantly scrolling through feeds, constantly consuming the next new thing. Does that feel like freedom to you? Or does it feel more like someone running on a treadmill they didn't choose, chasing desires they didn't generate, in a world that's moving faster than their own ability to think clearly? The promise taught you to confuse motion with progress. It taught you to confuse having more options with genuine liberation. It taught you to confuse what you possess with real power, and to confuse comfort with having a purpose. But here's the truth. Real freedom isn't easy. It's not light and breezy. It's heavy. So it requires facing yourself completely, without any distractions. It requires detaching from the identities you were rewarded for performing your entire life. It requires giving up the validation from others that you've been trained to crave since birth. It requires walking away from the safety of the crowd, even when the crowd is all you've ever known. This is why true freedom is so rare. It's not taken away from us. It's actively avoided. People don't escape their cages. People escape discomfort. It's so much easier to be entertained than to be enlightened. It's easier to be told what to believe than to question the very foundations of your beliefs. It's easier to follow the well-trodden path than to carve your own through the wilderness. But deep down you've felt it, haven't you? That quiet inner voice, that sense of discomfort you can't quite put your finger on. The feeling that something is just off. Not necessarily in the world, but in the very architecture of how things are presented to you. Why does life feel so repetitive sometimes? Why do your dreams feel like they were borrowed from a movie or a commercial? Why does society often feel like a loop? And why do people act like characters reading from the exact same script? It's because, in many ways, a truly free mind is unpredictable. But a conditioned mind is profitable, and you weren't conditioned through violence or force. You were conditioned through comfort, through the promise of a simple life that doesn't ask too many difficult questions, through the myth that as long as you have choices, you must be free. But I want you to start asking yourself a new set of questions. Who built the choices that are presented to you? Who decides what options appear in your life and which ones remain hidden? Who benefits from the choices you ultimately make? Who profits when you choose the default path, the easy road? Who wins when you stay compliant, distracted, and comfortable? And most importantly, what would happen if you chose something that's completely outside the script? This is the point where the illusion begins to crack. Freedom begins where conditioning ends. And conditioning ends the very moment you start to seriously question the promise. Because when that promise loses its power over you, the truth finally becomes visible. You weren't raised to be free. You were raised to believe you were free. And that is the most dangerous, most effective cage ever built. The one that convinces you the door was never locked to begin with. Next, you need to understand who built the world you're walking through. Because the cage isn't built with walls. It's built with influences, with conditioning, with invisible hands shaping your free will long before you ever used it. You didn't grow up choosing. You grew up being shaped by forces you never saw, by systems you never questioned, by environments you assumed were normal because everyone else accepted them too. Your first architect? Culture. Culture told you what's acceptable, what's embarrassing, what's normal, what dreams are realistic, what happiness should look like, what failure should feel like. But culture wasn't shaping your identity. It was shrinking it. It teaches you early. Don't stand out. Don't question tradition. Don't embarrass the family. Don't be different. And so you learn to fold parts of yourself just to fit, to become a version of you that causes the least resistance, to silence the parts of your soul that threaten the comfort of others. Culture doesn't control you with force. It controls you with belonging, with approval, with the fear of looking foolish. You don't rebel against it because you're terrified of being alone. That's the first architect. The quietest one, the one that works from inside your bones. Then school takes over. Not to teach you how to think, but to teach you how to obey. Sit. Raise your hand. Wait for permission. Follow instructions. Memorize the answer, repeated bike. Forget it after the test. School trains you to chase validation. Gold stars. Grades. Approval. Reward. Not curiosity. Not creativity. Not individuality. School makes you fear mistakes more than ignorance. Fear standing out more than blending in. Fear questioning authority more than being wrong. It doesn't create leaders. It creates workers. Predictable. Manageable. Trainable en mente. Redone with you. Media steps in. Media doesn't show you reality. It shows you a version of reality chosen for you. It tells you what's urgent, what's terrifying, what's trending, what matters, who's the villain, who's the hero, who deserves your sympathy, who deserves your hatred. Media manufactures emotions the same way factories manufacture products. Your anger is engineered. Your fear is designed. Your outrage is curated. Your worldview is pre-built. Two people watching two different feeds aren't disagreeing. They're living in two different universes, and both think they're right. That's not freedom. That's programming. Then entertainment fills in the cracks. What you desire, what you envy, what you fantasize about, what lifestyle you chase, what insecurities you carry, what you compare yourself to, all crafted through stories, music, celebrities, influencers. But entertainment doesn't just entertain you, it trains you. It shapes your cravings. It shapes your standards. It shapes your insecurities. It shapes the type of person you think you should become. It gives you dopamine, not direction. Escapism, not evolution. Spectacle, not substance. The system doesn't hide truth. It buries it under noise. Then comes the monster of our time. Technology. Your phone is not a device. It's an ecosystem of influence. Every swipe is tracked. Every pause is measured. Every insecurity is recorded. Every desire is analyzed. And the result, a perfectly crafted feed. Not to free you, but to trap you. Not to inform you, but to shape you. Not to connect you, but to monitor you. Algorithms don't recommend. They steer. They guide. They nudge. They predict. They manipulate. You think you're choosing what to watch, but you're choosing from what the system decided to show you. Your attention is no longer yours. Your focus is no longer yours. Your opinions, often not yours either. Technology didn't steal your freedom, it stole your awareness. And when awareness dies, freedom never existed. But we're not done. Because economics is another architect. A silent one. You think money is neutral, but money shapes everything. Where you live, what you eat, how much you sleep, what you fear, what you tolerate, who you marry, what risks you take, what dreams you abandon, how much of your life you trade for survival. Freedom means nothing when survival is expensive, and the system knows it. When you're exhausted, you don't rebel. You comply. Not because you're weak, but because you're drained. And a drained human is easier to control than a terrified one. But the final architect, the strongest one, is inside you. Identity. Not your true identity. The identity the world gave you. Your nationality. Your religion. Your beliefs. Your politics. Your labels. Your personality type. Your social role. Your ideology. Your tribe. All handed to you. All reinforced. All protected by your ego. Identity is the cage people defend because it feels like me. But when your identity is built by the system doesn't have to control you. You control yourself. You defend the opinions they implanted. You protect the beliefs they fed you. You fight for the labels they gave you. You cling to the personality they shaped. Identity becomes the lock. Loyalty to identity becomes the key that keeps you inside. And this is the truth. You weren't choosing freely. You were choosing along the lines of a blueprint someone else drew. A blueprint designed to keep society stable, predictable, profitable. You think you're living your life, but you're performing a role handed to you before you understood what life is. There are architects everywhere. Culture, school, media, entertainment, technology, economics, identity. You didn't build them, but they built you. And once you see them, your illusion of freedom begins to fracture. You need to see the bars, because a cage without bars is the most effective prison ever invented. And the modern world has mastered this art. It doesn't lock you in with walls. It locks you in with psychology, with habits, impulses, comfort, fear, identity, and distraction. You think you're walking freely, but everything guiding your steps is invisible. The bars of this modern cage aren't made of metal. They're emotional, mental, and behavioral. They're internal. And the worst part, most people never even see them because these bars feel so familiar. They feel normal. They feel like just life. But I promise you, once you see them, you will never be able to unsee them. And that's exactly why the system hopes you never look too closely. So today, let's break the illusion. The very first bar, the oldest form of control, is fear. And I'm not talking about the dramatic, life or death kind. I'm talking about the quiet, everyday kind that no one wants to admit to. The fear of being judged. The fear of being wrong. The fear of being alone. The fear of failing, of losing money, of disappointing your family, of not fitting in. The fear of the great unknown. You see, you don't need physical chains when you can just trigger someone's fear. People will chain themselves. They will censor their own thoughts, shrink their own ambitions, and stay small, silent, and predictable, all on their own. Fear is the bar that doesn't even have to touch you. It just surrounds you. It whispers in your ear. What if you fail? What will other people think? What if you can't handle it? And for most people, that's where the journey ends. They stop right there. Not because the door is actually locked, but because they're terrified of what might be on the other side. The second bar is comfort. And this one is deadly. Comfort feels so sweet, so soft, warm, and safe. It tells you to just relax. It says there's no need to push yourself. Tomorrow is always a better day to start. You've already done enough. But comfort is not freedom. Comfort is sedation. The world hands you convenience on a silver platter to keep you perfectly still. Food delivered. Entertainment delivered. Opinions delivered. Even validation is delivered right to your screen. Everything is instant. Everything is easy. But easy kills evolution. Comfort kills ambition. It kills curiosity. It kills that rebellious spark inside you. We're taught to think that suffering is the enemy, but comfort is far more dangerous. Because suffering, at the very least, wakes you up. Comfort puts you to sleep. A person who is trapped in a cycle of comfort will never chase their true potential. They'll never challenge the system. They'll never break the illusion, because comfort gives you just enough pleasure to make you forget you were stuck in the first place. This brings us to the third bar. Distraction. This is the most modern, most efficient, and most profitable bar of them all. Distraction is the ultimate enemy of awareness, and the system knows this perfectly well. That's why our world is meticulously engineered to keep you endlessly occupied. Notifications pinging, social media, drama, the 24/7 news cycle, celebrity gossip, trending topics that change by the hour, endless scrolling loops, a complete overload of content, arguments, and memes. These are all just tiny particles of noise designed to split your attention into a million fragments until you completely lose the ability to focus on anything real or meaningful. A distracted human never questions the system. They never question themselves, their habits, or their life path. They never stop to look at the architecture of the cage around them. Distraction doesn't have to fill your entire life. It just needs to fill the empty spaces where deep thinking would have otherwise happened. If your mind is always busy, it can never become aware. And if you're never aware, you can never be free. The fourth bar is identity. This is arguably the most powerful and personal bar, the one you carry inside your own chest. Identity is the version of you that you've been trained to protect at all costs, not because it's inherently true, but because you've come to believe it is you. Your nationality, your religion, your political affiliation, your labels, your opinions, your tribe, your entire worldview. Think about it. Many of these things were inherited, not discovered, but now you protect them like they're sacred land. Identity becomes a mental cage that's locked from the inside. You find yourself defending beliefs you never consciously chose. You fight for ideas that someone else planted in your mind. You cling to a personality that was formed from years of conditioning. Identity makes you predictable, and predictable minds are controllable minds. It's these minds that unknowingly maintain the system. Next, the fifth bar. Validation. Most people don't realize how dangerously addictive approval really is. Likes, followers, compliments, reactions, recognition. Validation is the drug that keeps you perfectly in line with the system's expectations. You dress for validation. You speak for validation. You post for validation. You work for validation. You shape your entire behavior around getting it. Validation makes you obedient without anyone ever having to force you. People aren't controlled by dictators with armies anymore. They're controlled by their own fear of embarrassment and their deep desire to be accepted. That's the new dictatorship. It's policed by everyone and enforced by everyone. It's invisible, silent, and incredibly powerful. The sixth bar is habit. Your daily routines shape your life more than any law ever could. Wake up. Scroll through your phone. Go to work. Feel stressed. Consume something to feel better. Find a way to escape. Go to sleep. Repeat. Habit makes your days identical, and identical days make your mind go numb. A numb mind can never rise above its own patterns. Habit is how the system keeps you predictable, even when you believe you're living a life of free choice. People don't break their habits. Habits break people, silently, gradually, and usually without any resistance. This leads to the seventh bar, which is noise. I don't mean literal, audible noise. I'm talking about mental noise, the constant, unending chatter of the world. Opinions, debates, narratives, drama, distractions, dopamine hits, and endless forms of escape. This noise makes silence feel uncomfortable, even threatening. But silence is where the truth hides. If you can't sit alone with your own mind, you'll never hear the alarm bells ringing inside you. You'll never see the cracks forming in the illusion. You'll never question the invisible architecture all around you. Noise is how the system keeps your mind from ever truly healing. Because a healed mind becomes an aware mind, and an aware mind is a dangerous thing to the status quo. But the final bar, the one that holds this entire illusion together, is repetition. You repeat the same days, the same routines, the same thoughts, the same fears, the same desires, and the same reactions. Over and over again. Repetition is what convinces you that this is just what life is. That nothing more exists. That trying to break the cycle is unrealistic or naive. Repetition is what keeps you asleep. Awareness is what wakes you up. And absolutely nothing scares the system more than people who are finally waking up. Because once you see the bars once, you really see them. You stop blaming yourself. You stop attacking others. You stop playing the game by its old rules. And you start questioning everything. That is where the illusion begins to collapse. Not when you rebel outwardly, but when you awaken inwardly. The bars were never physical. They were always psychological. The cage was never locked. Ye just never tried the door. All right, let's talk about breaking the illusion. But first, you really need to understand what that actually means. Because this isn't about some grand act of rebellion. It's not about shouting, fighting, protesting, or flipping tables in some dramatic movie scene. The system, the machine, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't fear rebellion. Honestly, rebellion is predictable. It's easy to control. A rebellion can be redirected, absorbed, even marketed and monetized. Think about it. How many rebellious symbols are now sold on t-shirts? The system can diffuse that energy. What the system truly fears is clarity. A clear mind. That's something it can't control. A clear mind sees right through the manipulation. It stops reacting on cue. It stops chasing the next shiny object they dangle in front of you. A clear mind stops taking the bait. It's no longer predictable. A clear mind becomes sovereign. It becomes its own ruler. That's why a true awakening is so dangerous to the status quo. Not because it's loud and aggressive, but because it's silent and internal. You don't shatter the illusion with rage. You dissolve it with awareness. Awareness is the only revolution that actually works, because it rewires everything from the inside out. But here's the thing. Before you can get to that level of awareness, you have to face something the system has worked very, very hard to make you avoid. Yourself. And I don't mean the version of you that you perform on social media. Not the version that culture gives a thumbs up to. Not the version your family expects you to be, or the version that your own fear has built to keep you safe. I'm not talking about the identity the world rewarded you for. I'm talking about your real self, the one buried under years and years of conditioning. The one you stopped hearing because the noise of the world just got too loud. It's the self that still whispers to you in those rare moments when everything else is silent. That is the self that breaks illusions. And to hear that voice again, you have to do the one thing our modern life is designed to prevent. You have to sit with your own mind, with no escape route, no phone, no background noise, no endless scrolling, no entertainment, no stimulation, no constant drip of dopamine. Just you. Your thoughts, your patterns, your fears, all those suppressed truths you've been pushing down, the questions you've been afraid to ask, your real, unfiltered desires. This is the moment where most people panic. This is where they run. This is where they scramble for a distraction. Any distraction. Why? Because that's silence. It exposes everything the illusion was built to hide. Silence shows you just how much of your life is running on autopilot. It reveals how many of your desires aren't even yours, they were inherited, downloaded. It shows you how much of your identity is a construction, a persona. It makes you realize how many of your fears were planted there by others. Fears that never truly belonged to you. You see how much of your worldview was just downloaded into your brain without your consent. Silence is a mirror, and looking in a mirror can be terrifying when you've never truly met yourself before. But this, right here, is where the awakening begins. It doesn't start with anger at the world. It starts with radical honesty about yourself. You begin to ask the questions the system never, ever wanted you to ask. Questions like, why do I believe what I believe? Really? Where did this belief come from? Where did these desires I'm chasing actually originate? Who benefits from me being afraid of this? Why do I crave validation from people I don't even know? Why do I avoid silence like the plague? Why do I find myself repeating the same patterns? To semi-days, over and over. Why do my deepest dreams feel so impossible? Why do I feel this underlying emptiness, even when my life looks normal from the outside? And the big one, why am I so afraid to step outside the script? These questions are not comfortable, they're not convenient, and they're certainly not fun. They will tear pieces of your carefully constructed identity away. They expose your personal illusions. They show you just how much of your life you've been living on autopilot, but they also do something incredibly powerful. They open a door. Because the truth is actually very simple. You were never trapped. You were conditioned. And the good news is, conditioning can be undone. It's not instant. It's not easy. But it can be done. Deliberately. One conscious choice at a time. You don't break the illusion by fighting the system head-on. You break it by no longer feeding it with your unconsciousness. See, the system thrives on your reactions. It feeds on your outrage, your fear, your insecurity, your desperate need for validation. It gets stronger with your addiction to noise, your avoidance of silence, your dependence on comfort, and your attachment to a fixed identity. So what happens when you stop feeding it? The illusion loses its power. When you stop responding automatically, the architecture of control starts to crack. When you stop seeking approval from the outside, you stop being controlled. When you stop numbing yourself with endless distractions, you start to actually feel again. When you start to feel again, you start awakening. And when you awaken, the system can't hold you anymore. Not because it changed, but because you did. Your awareness becomes your exit strategy. Your clarity becomes your weapon. Your sovereignty becomes your act of rebellion. Your simple presence, your centeredness, becomes a threat to the chaos. Your understanding becomes your shield. Freedom was never something out there for you to find. It was always internal. The world doesn't have the power to take your freedom, it only has the power to distract you from the fact that you already have it. The illusion doesn't end when the system collapses. The illusion ends when you stop collapsing into the system. So what does breaking the illusion actually look like in your daily life? It's not about running away to a cabin in the woods, or abandoning society, or rejecting all technology, or isolating yourself. Breaking the illusion looks like choosing presence over autopilot. It's choosing your truth over what's comfortable. It's choosing silence over noise. It's choosing awareness over distraction. It's choosing inner stability over outer approval. It's choosing a life of purpose over a life of habit. It's choosing depth over cheap dopamine hits. It's choosing self-direction over a life of conditioning. It looks like pausing to think before you react. It looks like observing a situation before you rush to judge it. It looks like allowing yourself to feel your emotions before trying to escape them. It's questioning an idea before you automatically agree with it. It's acting from your own core values before simply obeying what you're told. It looks like living from a place of consciousness, not a place of conditioning. When you break the illusion, the world around you doesn't magically change. You do. You stop living inside the architecture of control, and you start seeing it for what it is. And once you see it, you can step beyond it. Because you finally realize the cage was never physical. The bars were never real. The door was never locked. The illusion was only powerful because you didn't know it existed. But once you see it, it loses all its power over you. Freedom isn't something you have to fight for. Freedom is something you wake up into, and waking up is the beginning of everything. Thank you so much for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more. See you in the next one.